drive that propels evolution? Or more importantly, what is natural selection, and who came up with such a theory?
Our answer brings us to the history of Charles Darwin. Charles was the fifth child out of 6. He came from a wealthy family and was born on February 12, 1809. Charles had a passion for history and nature and is known as the father of evolution.
His father, Robert Darwin, was an English medical doctor. He himself wanted Charles to follow in his footsteps and go to medical school. Darwin spent the summer of 1825 as an apprentice doctor at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. Unfortunately, he found surgery distressing.
Yuck!
And he felt that the lectures were dull and uninteresting. He neglected a lot of his studies, which bothered his father.
Rather than focusing on medical school, Darwin found his own passions. Soon enough, he found himself joining a geology course, which would lead him to boarding the HMS Beagle. A botany professor and friend of his, John Stevens Henslow, wrote a letter asking him to consider a self-funded expedition across the seas. While his father initially disagreed, he later was persuaded by Darwin's uncle to allow his son the opportunity.
One of the most important discoveries from Charles' experience aboard the HMS Beagle was made on the Galapagos Islands. Darwin noticed that several species of finches varied from island to island. For instance, one type of finch had a medium-sized beak that was large enough to break the tough layers of a cactus, but sharp enough to poke through the plant. Another finch had a slimmer beak, which corresponded to its heavy diet of insects. Finally, he realized that finches that fed on seeds had wide beaks.
This was due to allopatric speciation. When biological populations of the same species become geographically isolated, it prevents genetic interchange. Initially, the Galapagos Islands were only one island. Because of the continental shifts and natural occurrences, the finches were separated. As a result, the finches found their own ways to adapt to their environments. Here is another example. Say we have 2 elephants. Unfortunately, they get separated by a geographic barrier. Over time, the elephants will diverge into 2 different species. The elephants living on the right of the river may have stripes because it helps them stand out to other mates, while the elephants on the left of the river stay plain because they want to avoid being targets of plausible predators.
Although Darwin had many observations, he had 2 major ones that were crucial to his theories. He noted that individuals of a particular population usually have varying differences in their heritable traits. For instance, a population of beetles could have different phenotypes for color, such as red, blue, and so on. Another observation was that all species can produce more offspring than the environment can withstand. However, most of these offspring failed to survive.
Darwin was able to come up with 2 revelations. He deduced that species who were more adapted to their environments had a higher chance of survival, and therefore would produce more offspring. Additionally, because of the unequal abilities to survive, there would be an accumulation of desired traits. In a certain scenario, if a population consisted of black and green beetles, the green ones may have a higher chance of survival than the black ones because they have an easier chance of blending into the moss.
This leads us to one of the most important aspects of this video, natural selection.
Yay!
This theory was Darwin's prize winner.
Award-winning!
Natural selection stated that organisms better suited to their environments would have a higher chance of survival and would enhance their offspring survival as well. Charles Darwin knew that this was the major mechanism of evolution.
A+ Darwin!
And additionally, a major mechanism of speciation.
Darwin believed that natural selection had always been taking place, even from the first few organisms on Earth. He claimed that all beings on Earth were once derived from a common ancestor and adapted the term descent with modification. This led to the publication of his renowned book, On the Origins of Species. At first, it received outcries from critics. However, this book was the basis of our understanding of natural selection.
Although Darwin is a genius, he didn't come up with everything himself. He found inspiration from Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who was a French naturalist. Lamarck had two main theories. One revolved around use and disuse. He stated that individuals lose characteristics they do not require or use, and they gain abilities and characteristics that are useful.
Reach higher! Yum!
His second theory claimed that these characteristics were acquired and passed on to offspring. If an organism changed in its life, these changes would be mirrored in its offspring.
Look at my son.
I'm just as strong as my dad. However, both of these theories were inaccurate. Even so, they were important factors in Darwin's discoveries.
There are several pieces of evidence that support the idea of natural selection. By looking at fossils, scientists can compare the anatomy of humans to cats and even whales. We can see many similarities that show how organisms may have evolved from a common ancestor. Bacteria and its vast resistance to medicine is another example of natural selection. Because they multiply so quickly, they have a capability to reproduce and select the traits catered to their preference at an astounding rate.
Beat that, scientists!
Doesn't work on me anymore.
Ha ha, I'm resistant.
Try to beat me now.
In summary, Darwin introduced the world to the concept of evolution. His book explained the aspects of natural selection and how it shapes our world.